In the stillness of Christmas night, light found its way to the world. Today we'll get to bring a bit of that gentle glow to life with just some water, paper, and paint. I've been so excited to share this pretty little silhouette nativity piece with you. What better way to catch the spirit of Christmas than with this pretty little nativity painting? I really think you're going to love giving this one a try. So without further ado, let's get started. I've got here my watercolor paints, a paper towel, some clean water, and then of course we need some brushes. I think I'll just pull out the round brushes from this brush set today, the number 10 round, the number 6 round, and the small number 3 round. Now if you don't have these exact brushes, then no problem, just pull out a big, medium, and small round brush, and that should do the trick. And as a side note, if you happen to be interested in my fun little brush set, I'm happy to say these are going to be back in stock around the first week of December, just in time for a Christmas gift for either yourself or a loved one. I'll leave a link for that in the description of this video so you can sign up to be notified when they're available. Then you'll be amongst the first to know as soon as they're ready. Okay, now we do of course need some watercolor paper as well, and I actually already have a very light, simple pencil outline sketch on my page, but really probably the most important part of this is the very center here with the stable and the loose silhouette of the people inside. But let me pull out a darker version here so you can see what I have going on a little bit better. And if you're one who likes to just jump right into the fun of painting rather than trying to draw the outline for yourself, I will have this little drawing in my Etsy shop in a larger size, as well as some smaller card sizes so that you can simply print it out and trace it right onto your watercolor paper using a light table or even just a well-lit window in your house, and then you can just get right to the fun of painting. I'll leave a link for my Etsy shop in the description of this video, along with a list of information and links to any of the other products you see me using today, just in case you'd like to look into anything further. I'm just going ahead and taping my paper down now with some artist tape to help a little bit with some of that potential warping, and then we can get to painting. Okay, now this is an optional step next, but if you're one who doesn't like pencil lines showing, you might like this little trick. But because I plan to have these background washes of color sort of fade out more near the edges, I want to lighten up any pencil lines that I have so that they're not quite as visible. To do this, I'm just using a kneaded eraser, which is basically a moldable eraser that I've rolled up into a snake or little hot dog shape, and then I can just roll it along my page where I want to lighten up those lines. This just takes off some of that loose graphite, which in turn makes those lines lighter in value. All right, let's go ahead and pull out a few colors onto our tray for this piece. Of course, you can choose whatever colors you want to do for this, but I think I'm actually going to turn my palette around here to more of the neutral side and give some of those a try. This is just going to create a soft, earthy feel to the piece. First, I'll pull out a little Payne's gray for the darker areas, and then we will transition to some browns. Here, I'm going to pull out some burnt umber for a darker, warm brown color, as well as some raw sienna for a lighter, almost golden brown. And lastly, I may just pull out a very small amount of cadmium orange for a few hints of extra color. I still have a little bit of raw sienna in my brush, though, that's getting mixed in here, so that's just going to tone it down just a little bit so that that orange is not too bold and too bright. Okay, we are going to start off by painting in the background washes of color first that surround the stable in the center. We'll be painting this wet on wet so we can get all of these different colors to blend gently and softly together. And I'm just going to use the larger round brush to get this water on here so that we can cover a larger space a little bit quicker. Now, I'm just focusing on the background on the upper half of the page first, and then I actually might even paint a little bit of this water sort of in a circular area around the inside of the stable as well. I'll leave the center part open and dry, but this way we can just add a little bit of glowing effect inside the stable too. And if you ever need to soften some of the water edges a little bit, specifically inside this stable area, if you want to, you can take your paper towel and just dab up these edges a little bit. All right, let's start adding some splashes of color in here next. I think I'll try working my way from the lighter colors to the darker colors. So let's start with a touch of this cadmium orange that has a little bit of raw sienna mixed in, and we'll use that to paint more of the bright, glowy, highlighted areas. And I think the best place to start is just right inside the little stable here in the center of the page. I'll just spread this color around in sort of a circle shape, and I'm keeping it fairly light in value. I don't have a lot of paint, and you can use some extra water to spread that out and tone it down if you need to. And I think I'll once again just soften the edges of this color with my paper towel so that this kind of just gently blends into the white center. Okay, good. Now, why not throw a little bit more of this orangey color into the upper background space as well, almost like little fluffy clouds. And again, I'm keeping this pretty light in value. You don't need a lot of paint here. Now let's move on to the next color, which would be the raw sienna, and sort of blend that into this space as well. And I think I'll switch over to the medium number 6 brush for this too. I'll just tie some of this color into the first color and let them bleed a little bit together. And I might even emphasize the glow within the stable area by adding just a touch more around that very outer edge. And just as a side tip, if you happen to have your paper taped or on a movable surface, I can't exactly demonstrate because mine is just taped on the table, but you can pick up the board and tilt or tip the painting a little bit back and forth, and that water and paint can sort of naturally blend and bleed together. But if you're like me today and you can't move your painting, something that you can do to help blend or soften the colors is simply rinse and dry your brush off and then use the damp bristles to spread, soften, or lighten the color a little bit. You'll probably notice me doing that occasionally today with these background spaces. Okay, I know this doesn't look like much right now, but stick with me here. It's going to be great in the end. Let's go ahead and start blending in a little bit of the burnt umber next. And I might keep this color right around this outside of the stable. This darker color is just going to help frame in the stable as well as allow the lighter colors to sort of fade out towards the edges of the background. Now, you might even start to envision some of these as loose or distant background trees or bushes with this color. Try not to stress about it too much. We're just keeping this free and loose looking. Let's just take the paint and water and let it do the majority of the work for you. You can guide it, but don't try to control it too much. Just go with the flow. And with that being said, your colors are going to bleed and blend differently than mine do. So your painting is going to look different than mine, and that is totally okay. It just makes each of our paintings interesting and unique. All right, for the last color, let's add in a bit of this Payne's gray. And just like with the burnt umber, I'll focus this color right around the outside area of the stable. This is just going to create even more of a contrast between the background and the inside of the stable, which is going to become the focal point later. I hope you are having some fun with this so far. Amongst all of my Christmas card tutorial planning, I just felt like I wanted to do something a little bit different and maybe even a little more meaningful. So if you find you're enjoying this loose and simple Christmas nativity scene, then don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with others to help spread a little bit of Christmas light. Okay, well done. Believe it or not, that's actually a good portion of this painting finished. We just have a little bit left to go, and hopefully it's been enjoyable and not too difficult. Now, we actually need this whole upper half of the background to dry completely before we move on to the second half. You're welcome to let it air dry, but I feel a little bit impatient today, so I'm going to cheat and pull out my hair dryer just to speed up this drying process. Then once as that space is fully dry, we can paint in the second half. I'll be using the same colors on my tray, but I am going to freshen them up just a little bit. I want the colors on the bottom half to be a little bit more rich and a little darker in value than the top half, and this is going to sort of help give a little bit of depth to the piece. Having these a little bit darker on the bottom is actually also going to bring this area more forward and give the painting the illusion of depth. All right, I'll just go ahead and pull out the large number 10 round once again and start applying some water throughout this space just like we did before. And I may even overlap a tiny section of this wash over the first wash too. Not a lot, just a little bit right where they meet. But I think we can paint this space here to make it look like a loose bush at the base that maybe appears a little bit closer, again emphasizing that look of depth. You'll see what I'm talking about a little bit better in just a minute when we start adding in the color. Okay, I've got all of the water placed in here, so I'll go ahead and switch back to the number 6 and start dropping in some color into the space. This time though, I think I'll work my way from the dark colors to the light. I'll start with the Payne's Gray first and add a little bit of this off to the side of the stable. In fact, I think I'll take a nice dark concentrated amount of this Payne's Gray and actually go ahead and paint in those close-up bushes I was talking about just a minute ago. I'll probably add some of this gray off to the other side of the stable as well in just a minute to give this some balance. All right, let's go ahead and transition to some of the burnt umber next and blend that into the gray and move the color around the bottom of the stable area. I feel like I need to darken this brown color just a little bit more. I might add a touch of Payne's Gray into the burnt umber to help with that. And actually, let's get crazy here and add a touch of Dioxazone purple in there too. Okay, let's go ahead and take some of this darker brown and add that right at the base of the stable as well. Okay, good. I might need to soften and spread these colors out just a little bit, but then I'll go ahead and start adding some of the raw sienna in here next. And lastly, we'll add a touch of the cadmium orange mixture on the outer edges. Now, if you feel like you need to add or touch up any of these colors, feel free to do so, but just remember that you'll only want to play around with this while the paint is still wet. If you start adding more water and color in here, once as it starts to dry, you're probably going to get some blooms or maybe some hard edges that you don't want in there. But speaking of hard edges, I'm actually not going to soften the outer edges around the wash this time. I'm going to leave them a little bit more hard and fluffy so that it kind of creates a fun contrast compared to the soft, light edges up above. Plus, it once again adds that illusion of depth by making the bottom area feel a little bit more forward and the top like it's a little more pushed back. All right, I think I've got this about how I like. I probably shouldn't mess with it too much more. Sometimes it's good to know when to call it done. I will go ahead and just fast dry this area with my hairdryer too. And the good news is that we only have some detail work left to do and we can call this done. Okay, now that this is dry, I feel like I need to add a little bit more Payne's gray color off to the right side of the stable. I'm just going to add a touch of light gray first and then add in some darker gray while that's still wet. And hopefully I can blend all of this into the overall piece so it looks good. Sometimes adding things in like this later is a bit of a risk, but I'm going to give it a try anyway. Luckily, that turned out okay, and I think I like it much better. All right, I want to paint in a few lines or sort of drip marks at the bottom of the page just for fun and an interesting sort of look. I was originally going to just use the number 3 round, but I've changed my mind and I think I'm going to pull out the thin number 1 rigger to do this job instead. It's usually a little bit easier to keep my lines thin with this brush, so I'll just take a touch of some of the color on my tray that kind of matches what I have going on at the bottom. And I'll just paint in a few lines of different colors and lengths in here and there. And if you don't like the look of this, then no worries, just don't add it into yours. While I've got this thin brush out, I might even add a few dots or splashes of color in here and there. If you want, you can make yours more spontaneous of splatters by loading a brush with color and tapping it on your finger or against another brush. I almost did that, but then I decided I wanted to have more control of where and how many splatters I had this time, so I'm just going to paint them in by hand instead. Okay, it is time for the final little detail work. Let's pull out the number 3 round now and take a touch of either cadmium orange or raw sienna or a mixture of both and quickly paint in the star in the sky above the stables. Now I'm painting this in a little bit more of an asymmetrical looking way just to keep with this sort of loose theme look that I already have going on. Good. Now take a touch of burnt umber and paint in the outside lines for the roof and side walls of the stable. Next up, I'll just paint in the silhouettes of the little people, Mary, Joseph, the baby Jesus that are inside the stable. Now, I'm not doing anything special here. I'll probably use a variety of colors to make it sort of interesting. But other than that, there is not a lot of detail lines or marks or even shading to these. I am painting these wet on wet to help that color blend a little bit, but then I'm just filling them with color. All we need is to give the idea that these are shapes of people, and that is good enough for a loose piece like this. All right, well done. I think at this point you can call it done if you want. I decided to pull out the rigger brush and take some light valued paint and add in some little straw or grass lines around the baby Jesus just for the fun of it, but that is totally optional. When your painting is completely dry, you can take a good eraser and erase any of those leftover pencil lines around those outer edges that you can still see, and then there we have it. Wasn't this a fun piece to try? It's pretty simple and uncomplicated really, but it leaves us with a really neat look and a neat feel. I'm so glad you joined me today. I hope you had some fun and maybe even learned something new. If you did enjoy this tutorial, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.